We're live, bro. Anyway, it's Lumberjack Landlord and Dion Talk Financial Freedom. Good to have my buddy here. We decided we'd get together. We try, believe it or not, everybody, we try almost every Friday to do this. And it's either he's, forgets or is in the midst of a heater, with crushing and killing aliens. Or my kids have me doing something, or I have some appointment or whatever. But we're here with you today. And so what's really cool is we wanted to talk about the stuff that Dion couldn't be more wrong about. He has a different title, obviously, for his show. But it's really just talking about some of the differences that we have, recognizing that we're both super successful. We both make tons of money. And that's a really awesome thing. And that's what we obviously try and help everybody else do, avoid a lot of the mistakes that we've made. But the idea is just kind of talking about the things that we do that are different, the things that we disagree on. Some people know some of these things, other people don't. But I think the real key is understanding, the explanation behind it. And there's some things that I've warmed up to more that Dion does. There's other things that I still refuse to do. But we wanted to kind of talk about those things. So Dion, thanks for coming and hanging out with me. What did you want to talk about first, pal?
Well, I had to adjust the title on my video too, because we're going live on both channels. But how Matt, the Lumberjack Landlord, goes out of his way to make life extremely hard for himself didn't fit.
Exactly.
So, here we are with things we disagree on when it comes to investing. We're going to leave parenting, relationships, politics, and religion out of this conversation. And we're just going to go with those things that affect investing, financial freedom, retiring early.
That video would have blown up the internet. I'm glad we took it down.
We did that one time, and the people who were there for the live got to see that both of us are nuts.
Yeah,
I agree that was the ending result there.
Exactly.
So we've got a few different topics we're going to be covering in this video at different points, and we'll answer all questions that come up in the chat.
Yes.
The first one, I think, is the biggest difference between us and our investing strategies is the lazy investor versus the what Thatch Newen would call forced appreciation.
Oh, dear
the
God.
BRRRR methods, the rehabs, the flips, the work that you do that would make me not be an investor.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, we know that your time is worth more than $3,750 an hour. We've established that based on the BRRRR that you did. I think, for me, it is, I think it's kind of cool because a lot of times I know the market well enough and I know my contacts well enough. They can reach out to me and they can say, hey, do you want this deal? And I'll look at it. And that's what we always talk about, really often. You're in an area that's so large and you have so many opportunities just from the perspective that you invest in kind of 6 different places because they're all within like an hour of each other. So because you have that, like you can actually find deals and also population driven, you can find deals, over the course of a 90-day period, you can find 2 or 3 probably worth doing. Is that something, would you agree with that? Is that too aggressive, too big of a number? On like MLS?
No, so I think there might be more deals in my market because I'm in so many different markets. That would be a good point. I also think there's a couple contributing factors. First, there's a lot of really bad real estate agents in my area.
Whoa.
Right. So there's some good ones. Like I know Beth Traverso. There's a guy, David Pitchler, that I've worked with. There's several agents that are good. There's some of the people that I've met at our local meetup that are becoming agents and will become good agents. But a lot of the listings I've found were a horrible picture, a terrible description.
Yep.
Like they just kind of gave up and said, hey, this is for sale. If somebody wants it, go for it. They didn't do any of the good marketing. We'll also agree on something later where I bought those break-even deals that we made an entire video about that wanted to break your brain. That makes it easier for me to find deals that don't take work as well, because I'm willing to buy a literal break-even deal, given a couple of other criteria that come up after that.
I hate those. Still hate them. But yeah, I mean, I think so for me, all of the farthest any of my properties are from each other is 25 minutes. That's the farthest. So you can go from one end of my portfolio to the other and you're 25 minutes away. And I'm pretty much close to kind of smack dab in the middle, largely speaking. But as I built the portfolio, I wanted to be very concentrated in an area. I wanted to take advantage of economies of scale. I wanted to take advantage of, all the same crews, all the same workers, a lot of guys that are hyper local that don't want to travel, and so in building that out, I had to create a number of different opportunities with deal flow. And so that is, I buy wholesale, I buy off market, I hire virtual assistants to work on lists that we create and then call on those lists. You name it, I've done a deal that way. Tax sale, tax lien, foreclosure from a bank, short sale, you name it, I've done a deal that way. But what I believe that gives me is it gives me a lot more deals to choose from. So I don't have to always say yes when a deal comes across my desk, and I don't have to make it happen. I think a lot of people feel like they're in a position where they have to kind of make a great deal happen because they don't see them very often. So they're like, hey, we have to make this one happen. And so my hope is that, people expand their horizons, go a bunch of these different ways. And then they realize, you get a few calls from a wholesaler over the course of the year, a few from an agent off market. You talk to a couple of people in landlord group that are looking to maybe get rid of something. And so I think that that's one of the things that it kind of excites me the most is I never know when my next deal is going to come, but I know I have people out there working to find the next one, and it doesn't cost me anything until they do.
So I'm on the opposite end of the spectrum, and we've got a question about your go bag. My go bag looks very different than the go bag that goes to rentals with me. But so I want to break down a little bit of the terms you just used.
Yeah.
You name it, I've done a deal that way.
Yep.
All the different strategies and everything.
Yep.
How different do you think your strategy would be if you could say the following? In my entire investing career, I have not done 10 deals. And I reached financial freedom.
Yep.
Made work completely optional. Have over 200,000 a year in actual profit after setting aside for repairs, maintenance, and vacancy, after paying all of the expenses, versus looking at how many deals just like the work involved in the deals, let alone the management of the properties, the maintenance of the properties, arguing with City Hall, permit, just how many deals do you think you've done?
How many deals do I think I bought?
And sold.
Yeah. Like ever?
Yeah.
Oh, like 100 maybe.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So when we're talking about the lazy investor, my goal was maybe do 10 deals, all purchases, never a sale.
Yep.
Never a refinance to pull money out. Like to me, that's a deal. I had to do enough value add to the property or own it long enough for the pay down and appreciation to put equity in there for me to take the money out. So I've acquired a total of 7 mortgages ever in my life.
Yep.
Acquired 8 properties. So I haven't even done 10 deals and reached financial freedom. And even if I had my kids that were younger, in my entire working career, until the last 2 years, I never made more than 60 grand and we lived just fine.
Sure.
Right? I mean, sure, there was no 3-week trips to Disneyland or anything, but we did everything that you could do. We had a CD, we lived in the lake, right? We had only animals we wanted. So to have over 200,000 off of 8 deals, my brain can't wrap around, and I'm going to say it nice and slow, Matt, so you know how insulting I'm actually being. Why would you do that to yourself?
Good question. So that's a good question. So the first 10 years was the way you did it. First 10 years was house hacks. It was MLS. I didn't get my first off-market deal, I think, until year 12. And so what I did was I kind of looked at the strategy and I said, over the 10 years, we made it through the great financial crisis. We made it through, potentially, 3 bankruptcies and going from 8 tenants to 3 tenants to 1 paying tenant. And so I started off exactly how you did. And so that was kind of the first, 10, 12 years was only MLS deals. No real networking, no real meetups or any of that stuff. It was really very much just the island for the first 10 or 12 years. And then I got an off-market deal and I saw how easy it was to do that deal. Like that deal was just easy. Like I was just like, wait, we're done? They're like, yeah, we're done. I was like, what do you mean we're done? Like, shouldn't there be like gnashing of teeth and insulting back and forth? Like, I feel like this is too easy. And so that's what opened my eyes to being able to really say, okay, where do I want to go from here? Because after 10 years, I think I only had it wasn't a lot. I maybe had I maybe had 9, maybe 10. I was right around there as far as like the number of rentals, a number of buildings that I had, and they were, duplexes mostly. And so what was really interesting about that was I did it that way. I did it that way for the first 10 or 11 years. And then I realized I really know what I'm doing. Now I'm kind of locked in. I've got all this experience. I have all the systems in place. I have all the relationships. What I need to do is, what do I want to do from here? And then it was kind of what you talked about, which was like the 4X thing. How much money do you want to have? And knowing that I wanted to have plenty of money, knowing that we were waiting to have kids, knowing that we were waiting to do all that stuff. And my wife was a nurse. I'd finished putting her through college. Did I want her working all the time and then I was just home with the kids? Probably not. And it's not that I don't love spending time with my kids, but I'm not like a full-time, I could do 4 kids every single day, 24/7. That's not where I'm gifted. So yeah, the first 10 or 11 years looked a lot like yours. It was just, I made a decision that I said, with all this skill, all the knowledge, all the know-how, I want to do something different that can give me a much bigger pile to pull from. Because the opportunity for me now is I've got 53 buildings and I can change that and I can go to 75 or 100, or I could go down to 25, pay everything off, and just have this massive cash machine and millions of dollars sitting in the bank. All are options. The nice thing is that, as you know, it's having that option. You got to build all that, right? You got to build all that to be able to have that option. To be able to downsize, you have to have enough to downsize from. And still have the nut that you need to make. So yeah, I think, our first 10 years look a lot alike because we both house hacked. We both were, living on nothing because I was paying for a bunch of tenants that weren't paying their rent. So our first 10 years kind of looked a lot alike. I did 9 house hacks in my first 13 years. That was how we did it. 9 house hacks in the first 13. So yeah, my first 10 years looked a lot like yours. It's just, I just made a decision on the other side of it to go, that off-market deal was so easy. I want to do a lot of those. That was easy. So now I just need to set myself up to do that.
I like it when I see PE turned RE in the chat on a weekday, because I know he's just sitting at school with an earbud in watching his kids on the field. So I think there's a major difference between those first 10 years, as similar as they can be.
Yep.
When did you acquire your first property? What age?
22, I think. 22.
So 10 years in, you're 32.
Yeah.
10 years in, I was 50.
Oh, I know.
So I think that's probably more so than the lazy nature that either one of us might have. Because at 40, I went all in and grew a CDL school from like 6 staff to 60, revenue from 60,000 to 9 million. Like, I was in the growth trajectory for work. Had I started before 40, even because I didn't even start saving money until 40 to buy that first rental, which I got at about 43. I think it would be, I'd probably have a very different looking real estate portfolio.
Yeah, if you started earlier.
But starting at 40 and getting to 50 and realizing how much more less actually is.
I think, and that was the thing I think for me too was, I loved my job, but I was single. I didn't have any kids. I didn't eventually have any ex-wives, and that's a difference maker, right? Like that, finding that few $100,000 in debt that you had to fix. I didn't have that issue. I didn't have college that I had to pay off because I'm a 9th grade dropout. I didn't have any bills really so much to speak of. My biggest bill was, my 1984 Volvo GLE 760 that I spent $1,500 on because I love cars, but I like driving cheap ones, especially when you're putting a ton of mileage on them. But yeah, I think that first 10 years, it matters when you start to tackle it, right? Like if people start to tackle it young, like myself and like Cody did, and even Christian, he was pretty young when he started, but when we started to tackle it, when we're the age that we are, being a lot younger, we have a much longer time horizon. So, if I'd left properties untouched in my early 50s, a lot of them would be paid off. The cool thing is I can still pay off about as many properties now with the fact that we have the massive cash flow that we do. So we can strategically start paying stuff off. Like we could, in large part, we could pay off a property every couple of months, every 2-3 months, we can pay something off, based on what the mortgages are. So it'll be interesting to see. I should probably answer the question about the go bag. And Ninja Vanish, thanks for the super chat and the super stickers. So the go bag, what is in the go bag? So in my go bag, is always, I think I'll list off the top 10 things, because I know there's some other stuff in there, but it's kind of the top 10 things we have to make sure we have. I always make sure that I have some sort of adjustable pliers, because I never know what I'm going to have to grab onto. So I want to have adjustable pliers. I always have shark bites. I always have a couple of shark bites in my bag, because we have the crimping tool on the truck. And so Kenny has that, but if I had to go out and do something, I could still do something. I have a cutter in my bag, so I can cut any line pretty quickly, and I can get it, get a new piece put in. I've always got a headlamp, that I can put on my head. That's something that I always have. I always have basically a box cutter, but a real box cutter knife, so I can kind of cut through anything that I need to cut through. I've always got a shut off. So if I need to cut into it and get a shut off to shut off a line, I always have a shut off that I can pop on a line and actually shut it off. I always have a set of safety glasses. And it's not a butt kissing moment. I just have one of those. I always have a set of them because I've been underwater flowing and you can't see. So if you put the glasses on, you can at least see with the water smashing you in the face, on like a supply line. I'm trying to think. Those are kind of the big things. The big things that we have. I always carry a pipe in my truck. And that's so I can slide it off on the edge of like a lot of times the steam systems and things like that, they can, you need to get a steam radiator off or something like that. And so you need leverage, and like the 15-inch pipe wrench doesn't really work. So you got to put a pipe on it so you can actually really turn that thing. But that's usually what's mostly in the go bag. Is it's mostly water related. I'll also have a thermostat always in my bag, because when they're like, oh, I don't have any heat, sometimes it can be the thermostat. The thermostat can have died. That's usually what's in the go bag. And then just your normal list of tools, if you will. So a driver, and then a set of bits.
So I'm probably going to overshare too much here.
Probably.
I was just actually helping Chesla with an eviction just before we went to Portugal, and we resolved that when we got back. So I've actually got my go bag sitting here, my tool bag for rentals. And nice. So here, what I've got, and let me see if I can get this to show. We've got, standard different types of drills, but then really where it comes down to is this is a dolly setup.
What is that?
It's a stack, right? So
it's a bunch of tools.
The bottom stack, the bottom stack has like a brad nail gun, your jigsaw, like your primary tools for that. But as you come up to the top, it's messy right now because I was putting things away. Each one of these pops off. That top bag has everything that you just mentioned, basically, except for the shark bite stuff. So I'll take that and it just pops off. Put that in the truck. So I have all the tools to do all of those things. And when I help friends, like I went over to Curtis's house, PE turned RE, and I was like, oh, hey, you're working on a coated lock. And it was really simple. You know how the locking mechanism can be short or long, depending on where the hole is in the door. So I had all the tools there to fix that. So I'm the lazy guy, but I have all of that stuff. I have it ready to go at any time. But I like the way the stack works because you can throw the whole dolly in the back of the truck. If I know I'm going to be doing like baseboard or door trim or redoing it, putting in a door jamb or anything. I
am responding to Michelle.
So that's not for my rentals. I can't hire. I'm not going to, well, I could. And I'm a cheap bastard. I don't hire guys to go work at Chesla's house. I'll go work at her house. At her rental.
Well, yeah, because of trade. Duh.
Right.
Like, that's the bar. Yeah, because of the barter system.
It's the bargaining system, right? Or my brothers, I've gone and we put a roof on his shed. Like when I say I might call it a shed, but it's a 30 by 60 shop. at one of his units, right? So I'll do stuff like that. Like, I don't mind work. I don't want to have to work. Having to work is one of the worst feelings.
It's true. Having to work is one of the worst feelings. But thank God you're prepared. You have enough tools to actually build an entire house, Dion.
Yeah. So, well, like right now, Chesla's building a table. I'll be using a chop saw later today. I've got a chop saw to build the legs for it and everything. So those are really the tools that I would not want to live without.
Yes.
A chop saw, a brad nail gun, and your drills can save you thousands of dollars on a super simple project. Just because you pay the handyman to travel there, you pay for their labor, their knowledge, the tools they had to buy.
Yeah, of course.
Because you're never really paying for the project you're having done.
Yeah. You're
paying for the amount of time the handyman or contractor could be making money doing something else. So if you have some of those simple tools and you have there was a rental where I think the closet wasn't trimmed out. I like to trim out the closets. I don't like to leave. I don't know why, I've seen it a ton of times, but the drywall just goes down to the floor. So I'll go grab a piece of trim, throw the thing in the truck, and go see a rental that I haven't seen in 5 years.
I understand. That's a shocking amount of tools, Dion. I have, so my go bag is meant for emergency. So it's grab and run. And
that's the top bag. The top, you just grab and go. Yep. It just literally clips a button and comes off.
Yeah. We teach people how to build a go bag. If they're going to be self-managing, we teach them, or even if they're not, but they're local, we teach them how to build a go bag. Cause that's really important and critical, but yeah, I've got the same stack. So I think that, yeah, I have a Milwaukee stack. I love it. I absolutely adore it. I think it's one of my favorite things. But that's when you're setting up for a day to do a bunch of work. I think we've all learned something very valuable today, everybody, haven't we? We know that Dion is far more prepared than the typical lazy man. But I guess it's because you are so prepared that you can in fact be lazy. But
there's a lot of sleep like a baby when you know you have reserves. Sleep like a baby when you know you have insurance. Sleep like a baby where if I get a call and can't get a hold of a handyman, I can go solve an issue.
Absolutely.
I'm not gonna. I've got a list of handyman.
Yes.
And a list of other investors. Recently, I actually reached out to Michelle and to Curtis and to, I think, Josh and Steve, and said, hey,
yeah, where's
who's
Josh?
the handyman you're working with currently that's life hasn't imploded, that's available to do work? So I could add to the list.
Exactly. But I think that that's an important lesson too, like the referrals, right? So I like to be around other landlords because I like to understand, hey, who are you using? Or, hey, who have you used recently that you're just like, I got to stay, they crushed me. They were brutal. They were horrible. Because
everybody noticed the guns and the alcohol when I was doing that.
ATF is on their way.
Right. Literally what's down there too.
But yeah, I think, so on the go bag, that's what the go bag looks like. On the deal side, that's, the first 10 years were not anything other than MLS stuff. And we just wanted to accelerate. So I think that that's what's interesting is I've seen guys like, Kyle Dorn and Robert Farinelli and CJ Underwood. And I've seen a lot of these guys that have gone out there, and I know I'm missing plenty. Sorry, everybody. But I've seen a lot of those guys go out there and, have 3 or 4 different strategy for making acquisition. And it sped up their business to the end result that they want to get to. I think everybody also, and Dion, something you and I talk a lot about, which is just kind of right sizing. You believe that you're almost maybe too big. And I believe that on Mondays that we're probably almost too big because there's always something that's come in that has to be taken care of. Obviously somebody else takes care of it, but it's still something that's come in. But I think that's what's really interesting. What's really interesting as we look at that is, we could really truly, depending on what's going on in the market in the next year or two, we could literally be half the size in 2 years. We could also be double the size in 2 years, or we could be exactly the same size. Truthfully, we haven't picked what direction that we're going to go. So,
yeah, I've got a few levers to pull. Speaking of things we disagree on,
yes.
I'm probably going to be adding another small multifamily. We would agree on that.
Yes.
What we disagree on is I'm possibly going to add debt to an existing asset. I don't like how under-levered I am right now. I don't think
Okay.
I'm getting enough levered
We
appreciation or levered
disagree on that?
appreciation. What's that?
We would disagree on that?
Well, I disagree. Like that's what you would do. I've never added debt. No HELOCs, no cash out, no sale for none of that. And I'm looking at whatever the math is here. I owe 1.5 million. The gross value is like 7.3 million. So
Yeah.
I want to be around 50%. I'm too under levered. I'm not getting the levered appreciation. I might end up having to write a tax check next year for the first time. I don't want to do that. I want levered depreciation. So I'll probably do both to get closer to 50%, put a mortgage on my paid off place that I'm living in and have a mortgage on the place that I purchase. And it's more to maintain the balance than to grow the portfolio.
Doesn't matter. You're still levering with debt.
Yeah.
Yeah. Welcome to the club, bro. Love it. Well, but that was kind of the same issue that I had too. Is it was threefold. It was one, I believe that there was a market opportunity coming, so I wanted to leverage whatever I could, but still be safe about it. Two was, even if nothing had occurred in the market, I still wanted to be far better, have far more capital sitting there ready, waiting to do whatever I wanted to do. Didn't know what it was going to become, but I still wanted to have a lot more money sitting there. And the third thing is, along, kind of with those other two concepts, was I'd never had that much money before. I'd never had anywhere near that much money, liquid cash before, ever, not even close. And so it definitely changes you for sure. If I hadn't have done a bunch of deals, I would have absolutely become, I probably wouldn't have left my couch for the next 10 years. Like I had to do something with, like, I have the propensity to be unbelievably lazy and just sit and use everything up here and just think through things but not actually then go do anything. But just whatever I can do from a phone type of thing. But yeah, I think I don't know. I think it's very, very interesting to see what's going to happen in the next few years. But yeah, I think you're right. You're going to lever up. You're probably going to lever up $1 million, at least $500,000.
At least a half, right?
Yeah.
A half, at least a half. Well, no, it'll probably be $1 million with the purchase.
Yeah, that's
right?
What I meant.
So the 400 to 500,000 is going to be the mortgage.
Yep.
On the existing asset,
mm-hmm.
And then I want to buy probably a 1.2, 1.3 million, something like a fourplex, and so the leverage on that will put me at around at least $1 million levered. That's the goal. And it's funny, it's not even really to get the cash flow. It's it's not that I lose sleep. I don't like the feeling of knowing I have such little leverage on the portfolio. And I get so many comments of people like, oh, how much money would you make if you paid off your properties? None. I'd go insane. I'd probably sell it all.
Yeah.
It's almost as bad as having money in the bank, right? The first time you levered up and you got all that money ready for whatever was going to happen when the rates dropped and you got that money there. Before buying this last place, I had about $500,000 in the bank, right? And I'm the guy that usually made $60,000 a year. I hated it. Every month that went by, I thought, okay, that's $500,000 that's losing value to inflation. That even with a bit of an interest rate return, it's not doing what it would and it's not getting the 30% plus that it would in a rental after 3 or 4 years.
Correct.
It's kind of interesting to try to think, okay, how do I put into words? I hated having money.
Mm-hmm.
How do I put into words? I hate not having enough debt. Mm-hmm. Like those are some strong words. Hate is a strong word, but I hated having the money in the bank. I was like, oh, I got to find a deal. This is driving me crazy. And then with the properties that I have, not having enough debt, that bothers me.
Mm-hmm. I think this is sounding eerily familiar to what I went through in my year 12. Just saying. Because I was in exactly the same position. I'd had some properties and they were at that point, they were healed, making money, had stable tenants. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, okay, well, I actually have plenty of equity just sitting there now in some of those. But it will be interesting. Jeremy, I saw your comment. Yes. Thank you very much for the compliment. I appreciate it. Many liberal tears were collected. In fact, I filled my pool with the amount of liberal tears that were collected. And so it was, I enjoyed it. James Wallace asks, why don't you invest in stocks to diversify? I have 6 good cash flow rentals. Don't want any more because of the stress of tenant management. Any advice? 40-year-old, decent W-2 income. Thanks, James. That's great info. Dion, do you want to handle first?
Yeah, that is a well-designed prompt for AI. I love it. That gave just enough info to know here's what you need, what information you're looking for.
Yeah.
So the first advice, if you and since you asked for it at the end, would be to improve your systems to where you don't feel like more tenants means more work.
Yeah.
My concept I like is treat your properties like you have 100 and your tenants like you have 1. If you had 100 properties, would you be the one going to fix the fence or swap out the light? Would you be the one serving eviction papers or communicating with your tenants about every repair? Or would you have some portal, whatever one it is, where the tenants can put in an issue that goes to the handyman and contractors that you've hired and worked with and built relationships with who know what the threshold is, to where they contact you for approval if it's above a certain amount or if it's a purchase of an appliance or something. But you're generally not in that. I want to say absolutely zero difference between when I had 4 tenants and now that I have 17 rentals rented out. I'm in the 18th house hacking. I get about a maximum 5 or 6 texts a month.
Yep.
In a bad month.
Yep.
And so I wouldn't notice. So that'd be the first thing is make it not matter. The other thing is, why don't you buy stocks to diversify? To me, I think, Matt, you're probably in a place where that might make sense. I really like Charlie Munger, who was Warren Buffett's partner. Charlie Munger always used to argue with Warren when they were doing presentations. Warren would say, you got to diversify. Even like Kevin O'Leary, Mr. Wonderful, says, no more than 20% in one asset class, no more than 5% in any one asset. Like diversification makes sense when you're super, super, super rich.
Right.
If you don't focus on one asset and master it, you won't become rich. And rich is when, it's a Jimmy Carr quote, more money wouldn't change your life.
Agreed.
So at 6 rentals, maybe they're paid off. Maybe the cash flow is great. Maybe you could live on that and more money wouldn't change your life. Sure, then take some and throw it at stocks. A complete risk, unless you take a couple of years absorbing the thousands of hours of content that we did in real estate to figure out how to master stocks, to know how to invest the right way. So I don't have the bandwidth to master multiple asset classes, crypto, stocks, run a business, right? I failed at a few businesses. I'm a better employee than I am an entrepreneur. If I owned any stocks when I retired, I probably would have stayed working because I would have not had the income that all of the money in one asset class that I've mastered. The return is so much more in real estate. And I can prove it. I would take a 5% cash on cash return rental over a guaranteed 10% or even 15% return with stocks, because the rental is going to make more. And it's proven over decades that that's true. What I did do is I'm at the point where I took 1% of my net worth to buy some stocks. It's not as an investment. I'm going to sell it in a year. I'm not, investment is long term. When the protests and riots started hitting Elon, I thought, wow, those stocks are 70% on sale. So I put a dollar cost averaged $1,000 a day until I hit 1% of my net worth. And I'll just keep it for a year till it hits capital gains. I'll see what it is next year. I've already made thousands of dollars on what it's done since I purchased it. But I haven't made unless I sell. So we'll see what happens next year. But it's literally like I would have bought that much in lottery tickets. Like that's the level of certainty I have that it's going to make money. I threw that money away. Don't care.
Yeah.
That's the only time I would go into diversification.
Yeah. James asked, I have good systems. James, I'm going to be as mean as I possibly can. You don't. Sorry. You don't. I have good systems because I manage 153 units and I manage 400 tenants, and I do it with one full-time employee. That's 40 hours of work a week. And so, and I can run everything right from here. And my daily involvement is, some days it's, if I do stuff outside of the jail project and the big 5 unit that we're redoing, if I'm excluding those, I maybe spend 3 hours a week managing my entire portfolio, maybe 3. It's not very much. And so it really is about building systems. Clint is exactly right. It's about building systems and processes. I don't talk to tenants very often. I don't need to, and nor does my lead property guy. We have a system and a process for how that works and how that happens. Now, there's obviously an emergency where it's like, oh, I have a leaking this or I have a leaking that. But when you look at a business, it's holistic. It is, how are you qualifying tenants? What are the types of tenants that you're actually getting in these units? What are the types of units that you're renting out? These are all the things that we honestly, like, that's what we do in my course. That's what we teach people how to do in the course, is build all the processes and systems around, because every other course out there, largely speaking, is here's how to buy. What we talk about is here's how to manage the entire portfolio and set up all the systems and processes to manage that moving forward. That's kind of what we build. So is it self-management worth all the work? Yeah. My 3 hours a week, is it worth the 3 hours a week that I spend to make the amount of money I do? Hell yeah. You won't find short of an entertainer or a basketball player, you're probably not going to find somebody that makes more money per hour than I do on a monthly basis, certainly in the real world. And it's just a ton of money. And it's because I have systems and processes, everything set up to manage the business. And all I have to do is check in, make some adjustments, make some plans. But that's why I'm excited to be done these big projects. That actually is what takes probably another 2 to 3, probably 2 hours a week, I'd say I spend on that stuff as far as the big projects go. But
I think the question would be, are you comparing self-managing to having a property manager versus not having rentals and investing in a different asset? I can give that stocks might be, for my 18 rental units, I do about 2 hours a month. Most months is 30 minutes. I'm basically just saying, yep, rents came in, maybe answering a text. Yep. A tenant turnover is probably going to take me 5 to 7 hours. So those months, the 2 hours kind of averaged out for the rest of the year. Is it worth all of the work though? My portfolio is a fraction of Matt's. And this is something else that we disagree on, and we should, is my portfolio is small enough for me to transparently share the numbers.
Yes.
It's still attainable. People can do what I've done. Mm-hmm. And when you share your numbers at the amount of time that you're in and the work that you put into the rehabs and the flips and the burrs, it would be like saying, if you're going to play basketball, don't do it unless you are LeBron. Like that income level is. So I get why you don't share your numbers. If I had a property manager, 2 things would change. I would work more. It would take way more time to manage a property manager than it does to manage my tenants.
Agreed.
And I would spend about $40,000 a year on property management. Just the property management. I would increase turnover with property manager versus doing it myself.
Absolutely.
So I'd have more work. What is 2 hours a month into $40,000? That's what I make managing my properties, just from managing the properties. The rest I make from owning the asset. Property management to me is not the solution unless you're investing at a distance. Because your property manager is probably going to make more than you do for a long time until you have a significant amount of gap between income and expenses. You're going to increase your turnover because that's how they make their money. So the question is then, maybe stocks is your better investment than real estate. If you don't want to put in the time to get your systems improved to where it is almost no work. I'm not the one dealing with tenants when they have an issue. I'm in a group chat with the handyman that's worked with them once or twice. So it took time to put these systems in place, to grow the relationships, to cycle through, because there is a reality with handymen. Like, some contractors will be contractors for 30 years, but most handymen do it for 2 to 3, and they either get a real regular job because they get back on their feet, or their life implodes and they're not a handyman anymore. It's hard to find a handyman who will consistently do that work, because if they're good, they generally grow so many clientele that they can become too expensive, because they're worth it. Right. So I'm always cycling through. That's the amount of work, is finding the handyman and contractors, not doing the work.
Yeah. I think for us, that was why we decided to just make it an employed position. We could get somebody that we really liked. We could get somebody that we could make a difference for them and for their life, and they were going to make a difference for us and ours. But obviously you're not doing that with 20 units. You're going to have to be at probably 50. That was probably the thing that we did was we waited until we were at probably 120 before we brought on somebody in that role. So yeah, it was, I think it's 100. I think for us, it was about 120 where we brought somebody on. We could have done it at 50 or 60, but decided not to, just because it was that much more that we could continue to put into the business and grow the business. But yeah, largely speaking, almost all of our stuff is outsourced. We're going to be changing the designation in 2026. Ash isn't going to do the books anymore. She's not going to do any of that stuff anymore. We're going to take that away from her and just outsource that piece. And then I'll just look at that financial report on an ongoing basis. So at that point, like I said, I think it's pretty straightforward. But yeah, and not to attack you, James, but yeah, I can honestly tell you there's systems and processes that we put in for every one of the people in the boot camp that they manage their entire life right from their phone. And it can be that easy, but it comes down to running it right.
Yeah, no, I think it's good to point out we're not trying to attack James, because we say this all the time too. There's no one right way. There's a one right way for you. And maybe James is the diversified guy. Maybe you do study stocks well enough and know how to put money into it. Maybe your income is high enough to where stocks can have a return. There's a lot of reasons why stocks didn't make sense for me. I didn't start saving until I was 40. So I didn't have decades for compound interest to do anything. I didn't have the income to invest enough for it to be anything substantial. So that's why real estate made more sense to me on a couple different levels.
Yep.
The other thing that we disagree on, I had a list because there is a few.
What was the other one? What was the next one?
Well, we've kind of touched the recycling cash flow versus recycling capital. But
you're going to do that
versus active.
You're about to do that.
Yeah, it's a lever I'm thinking of pulling for 2 years.
You're about to do that. You're still going to do it. You came over to the dark side. You're still going to do it. Hey, Dylan, good to see you.
I think this is a good one.
Okay. I doubt it.
You are creating generational wealth.
Yes.
And that is the third last thing. It's in the top last three things I ever want to do. I do not want my kids thinking they're getting anything. They've got a couple of stories that they go with. Is first, my next ex-wife hasn't even been born yet, and she's going to get everything. So they shouldn't expect anything. The second is it's divided into three for the three kids, but if any of them spend a penny on their mother, the other two get everything. The other thing is my will is going to start with being of sound mind and body. I spent it all.
Yeah.
I want them thinking if they aren't successful on their own, they're not getting anything from me. But if they are successful on their own, I'll add to it.
Yeah. For our kids, so the generational wealth thing, it's more, I like spending time with my kids. I want to spend as much time as I can with my kids. They're all going to have jobs like I did when I was a kid. Sam still comes to job sites and he'll help clean up, and he's 7. But all of the kids will do that stuff. They'll all grow up around the business. They'll all grow up working around the business. They'll all grow up seeing the other contractors and how we treat people. And they go pick up rent from tenants, and they sometimes will go with me to fix something if for some reason Kenny's not available. Thankfully, that's only been a couple times this year, which was nice. But they will go with me. And so the idea is, the plan is not to retire and hand them anything. The plan, or even die. The plan would be that they would work in the business. And then if something were to happen to me, we'd sell off a bunch of assets and create capital just to make sure that Ash is okay. And, she doesn't want to do this anymore, or whatever that looks like. But yeah, for us, it's not to hand off a business. If the kids decide that they want to do this, there will be a buyout structure for sure. Or maybe even an ASOP, but there will be some sort of a buyout structure. They will not be getting anything. They will not be getting anything handed to them. They will have to earn it. But it was much more, I like being out in the field with my kids, and they're young enough where I can do it. And so, yeah, they've done, the two oldest, Sam, who's 7, and Bryn, who's 6. They've actually been on sites doing work, doing cleanup, picking up weeds, picking up trash. They've done that stuff already. So I do actually agree with that. It's not going to be generational wealth where they get handed anything. I would say I'd spend it on a bunch of really elaborate vacations, but I hate vacations. So it's not going to really work.
I hate vacations too. I love traveling.
Yeah, I hate that too.
So a vacation is, let me go here for 2 weeks.
Yeah.
So if you have a day or two of travel, right, you don't have much. But if you say I'm gonna go here, how long can I stay with a passport?
Yeah.
How long could I stay if I went through the work to go get a visa?
Sure.
So a minimum is a month if I'm going to travel.
Yeah.
Like with airfare or anything, like or on a boat or anything, a ship. I'll take a road trip that's shorter. But yeah, no, I love the travel as long as it's long. So here's something else that I think we disagree on.
Okay.
Because we've made videos about it.
Yes.
Is buying break-even deals.
Oh, fuck.
I think you have what's called survivor's bias. You've made it through the hard work to get to a successful position.
Mm-hmm.
And so you would only buy either a great deal or a deal that has what you call meat on the bone. You're going to make so much off it. It's worth the time and energy and effort to buy it because you don't need it. Half of my deals would not be considered good deals, let alone great deals. Year one. And why do you think we are so different on that?
So I will buy deals when I see what the horizon is, i.e. like I'll buy something where all the rents are $1,200 because I know they're $2,000. And I recognize that, even some people are bad tenants. They're behind on rent or this, that, or the other. I think that, I don't think it's survivor's biased. I think what it really is understanding that, I think that it's understanding that it can go bad quickly and it can go bad quick a lot faster than people think. And so I think that the challenge is, and you can't change the time in which you invested, but the time in which you've invested has only been up and to the right. And the time that you've invested, the market's only been up and to the right. And sadly, I had to, be part of the great financial crisis. I wasn't one that did ninja loans. I didn't do any liar loans. I didn't get any deals where I was able to state my income. I wasn't able to buy anything for 5% down when it came to investment properties. I wasn't able to do that. And so what it really was is having gone through that trial and tribulation, recognizing that if you do have a deal that breaks even when you buy it and the market turns in that next 90 days and you start writing checks, I remember what it was like to almost go out of business. And so right now there's a lot more deals that will happen now that will put people under than there ever have been in the past, because people are willing to do the appreciation play like it's just something that's guaranteed in the next 2 years. Right. So there's so many of these gurus out there where they're just like, no, you don't get it. And it's like, no, I do get it, asshole. I don't want people going bankrupt. I don't want people having to show up for work every single day, because if they're in Dion's position when he started investing and they're making $60,000 a year and they're a single parent, they don't have any money left, bro. Like this means bankruptcy for them, even with a couple, it's the same thing. So for me, I just want that cash flow being there. Because I don't know if I can get to the other side. I don't know how long it's going to be. I don't know what I don't know what could possibly happen, but it was scary.
So have you ever heard the stories of my grandma used to save tin foil?
Yeah, of course.
Right.
My grandmother used to save tinfoil.
Yep. So they're not quite preppers, right? But they are so extremely frugal because they're not sure when the bread lines are going to start, or when you need the ticket every other day based on your license plate when you can get fuel.
Yep, sure.
Okay. So I think you have that survivor's bias from the 2008 housing crash. How would it have gone if you had 1/3 Section 8, 1/3 military, 1/3 working or retired, and not all from the same industry or same economic drivers? One of the reasons why I'm so spread out, it's you're 25 minutes. I'm at least an hour because I've got the ports, the base, Boeing, Amazon, all of the different businesses. you would have had less than a third of your portfolio impacted by the GFC.
Maybe. So, as you know, in the military,
Section 8 jumped up like 30% the next year.
Yeah. So in your area, in our area, it didn't, sadly. It was really bad in Manchester, and that's where I owned at the time. Manchester barely went up, but all the expenses went through the roof. So that was one of the things I actually went back and looked at. Second thing was, as far as the military go, they were still doing layoffs then. In that time frame. So I don't know that would have been guaranteed. I could have been stuck that way. I think that the biggest mistake that I made was where I invested. That was the mistake. The mistake was where I invested by far. It wasn't how I invested. It was very much where I invested, because all the market tenants went away. The one that was still left paying, she was in the Air Force, but we still could have been affected the other ways with, Section 8 was just Section 8 was 25% less. And yes, it's that much more than zero. But the problem is that I couldn't afford to have a Section 8 tenant in there with what I needed to get for rents. They were 20% less than what I needed to get for rent, because I bought in the wrong area and I bought with the wrong metrics of cash flow. That was what really, hamstrung me. The end result was great financial crisis. All the construction guys go out of business and none of them have jobs. But the other portion to that is, Section 8 I couldn't take Section 8 at the time. It was 20% less. And I couldn't, on the military side, I couldn't take that because they were doing layoffs. In fact, one of the largest military bases shut down a little bit earlier than that, Pease Air Force Base. And then some of the other installations and National Guard facilities around this area also had shut down. So it was, I think I would have done better than where I was. Like, I wouldn't have been from 8 to 1, but I might have been 8 to 2, maybe 8 to 3. And that's still, I wasn't, that doesn't even, that, because I bought in the wrong areas, and those places, they were D's that went to C's and C's that were going to B's. And then as soon as the market collapsed, they went right to C- immediately. And then within like a year and a half, they were D's again, so that's the downside to kind of buying any deal. If you use your criteria that you have now, that criteria largely will work, which is, all the things that you cover as far as, like we talk about with laundry setup and not good school systems and all those other things. Trust me, I was in the worst school system in the state. So I took that to the nth degree. There were metal detectors in those doors for kids. So yeah, I think, I believe that there's a down market coming. I can't predict how deep and down it goes. Some areas will be worse than others. I think the areas that will be worse than others are the same ones that are always worse than others. Florida's always worse than others. California's always worse than others. Las Vegas is always worse than others. Chicago is always worse than others. Detroit is always worse than others. So as a lot of those things unfold over the coming, I think 2 to 5 years, I think that those are going to be flat or down markets over the next couple of years. And the question is how much. Vegas has a knack of tripling in price and then taking a 65% cut or 60% cut. That's kind of how they roll. So it'll be interesting to see if any of that, with all the building that they're doing there, it'll be interesting to see how that hits things, because that's one of the biggest areas for Airbnb that I think is going to really upset the apple cart. 97% of the Airbnbs there are illegal, and Airbnb is falling out of favor.
So that is something that I think we disagree on.
Okay.
And we've disagreed on this now for over 18 months.
Yep.
You see a correction coming,
mm-hmm.
and I see inflation stopping that. Even if property values went down in
mm-hmm.
value,
mm-hmm.
the amount of money it takes to buy them would be more.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think our inflation data is accurate. I think in the last 5 years, we've created too much money. I mean, you've from 2020 to 2022, like more than 70% of our existing currency, digital and in print, was created.
Mm-hmm.
That hasn't filtered through the system yet. And so about 18 months ago, you and Zuber made a dollar bet.
mm-hmm.
Zuber said it would go up 5%. You said it was flat or down 5%. I forget. I said it would go up 10%. 10. My state went up 10.
Yep.
Market wide, it was up over 5. And you've said several times down from the peak, but I'm going year over year data. If we look
Sure.
right now, it's up year over year. If we went back to this time last year, it's up year over year. 5 years in a row, up year over year. Doesn't mean that we've had any kind of correction. It is local. You are going to see places like Vegas that has that economy that's driven by Vegas, basically, do bizarre, weird things, massive increases. It's going to be the not the canary in the gold mine, but just something that like plays vertical pong with values. And then I go back to the price increase or decline has zero impact on me. The rent increase or decline has an impact on me. Like you, I've invested to where rents could go down 50%. I still don't have to go back to work.
Sure.
I could still make all the bills. Maybe I would travel a little less. Maybe I wouldn't plan on buying a new GMC pickup in about a year. Maybe I'd put it off 2 or 3 years. Right. So it can have an impact on some aspects of life, but not like needing a job. I don't see rents going down, but I invest like they're going to. I don't see prices going down. I'm thinking about buying like prices were going to go down. We did that video with Zuber the other day. What would you do if we knew a crash was coming? I'd buy a rental. So I'm probably going to buy a rental, thinking if prices come down, I definitely want to be the one that owns the asset. And I know that everybody out there that watches the Crash Bro videos goes, well, if it's going to crash, don't buy now, wait for the crash. And no, that's the person who loses.
Right.
You're going to hear, don't catch a falling knife. You're going to hear double dip recession, double dip crash. Lenders are going to disappear. But in almost every recession, rents increase. The reason that houses go down in value is because more become available for sale. Lenders don't want to lend. People don't want to buy. If people aren't buying, that's why the prices are coming down. There's more renters. I want to own the asset people want. And then on that, another point on that diversification versus stocks versus real estate, we have diversified, right? You have different types of tenants. You're in 3 markets, not just one. I think that level of diversification and being in more markets, we're planning on prices could come down, rents can come down. That makes us more active. So maybe we agree on that and the Crash Bros disagree. How many times have you seen in the chat on the Crash Bro channels? Because I know I'm in there trolling too. But they go, I'm so glad I found your content, Mr. Crash Bro, whoever they're watching. I saw this one recently. My girlfriend almost talked me into buying a rental 2 years ago.
Yeah. I mean,
and
idiots.
They think that's a good thing.
Right. They're dumb. That's why they didn't buy the rental. So for me, what I see is I see days on market. So below the median, houses are still selling quickly. Above the median, they aren't. They'll still even though they might sell for less than what they hope for, they're still going to make money. But I think that pricing is absolutely coming down. Rentals, we used to have, like a 4 days on market type of thing before we were under lease, and now it's longer. We're in the 20s. So that's factually what's occurring in our market. We've had 2 units that we've lowered the price on what they rented out for. And those were recent tenants. So they were tenants that lived there for a couple of years. We should have had some decent appreciation in the rent. We didn't. It was flat, or in these 2 cases, it was actually down. The ones that we had where tenants were there for 4 and 5 years, obviously those are significant appreciation in rents. So yeah, what I'm seeing in my market is I'm seeing record sales still on small multis, 2s, 3s, and 4s. On single families above the median price range, I'm seeing them sit and sit and sit.
So that would be my question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of times where I'm not going to say that hang on.
Yeah.
That you used human origami to make your point, twisted yourself into a thing. When luxury comes down, home volume or home sale prices look like they came down. But we are not buying luxury. So I guess maybe that's the logic leap I haven't taken, is I'm looking at what is a duplex in a Class C neighborhood going for?
Sure.
It's more than last year. I expect it to be more next year than this year, even though the house across the street from mine that just listed for $950 for a 700 square foot 2-bedroom.
Sure.
like is probably not going to sell for that. But the duplexes in the area are going to sell for more. So the luxury is going to come down. We have a question here from Money. If you want to grab that one and throw it up on the screen.
Newbie investor, for maintenance, do you all do pest control quarterly, roof, gutter cleaning, HVAC annually? Anything I missed? Yeah, so I don't have an HVAC company go and change out a filter twice a year. That's silly. Like we'll buy a pack of 4 filters, and when someone's over there doing something, hey, was it changed in the last, check it. Was it changed in the last 6 months? Cool. Then swap it. So we don't pay for HVAC maintenance. That's very expensive. We don't pay for quarterly pest control because do you really have that bad of a pest problem? We don't pay for that. That's not anything that we take care of as far as like pest control goes. We address an issue, then we make sure that it's done properly so it's no longer an issue moving forward. And then it's something that's then monitored thereafter. But if you've actually eliminated the pest problem, then you shouldn't be having to do 2 treatments a year to keep the pest problem away. Second thing. Third thing is tree trimming. That shouldn't have to be done every year. No tree grows that fast. So do it properly, and you're probably good for 5 years, Dion. You're the tree guy. So if you just do it the right way, do it for 5 years, do it, and then you're done for 5 years. Never, ever, ever wait. No disrespect at all meant to you, Chris Ramsey, but never wait until the storm because you get the same answer from every tree guy. He'll give you one of these. Why'd you call me now? Go away.
Insurance is paying me 10 times what you would, so you're not on my list.
Exactly. I'm definitely not going to help you with that because I make 10x when it actually cracks through your face and through the face of your house. Like I'm going to make that money. So that's where, for me, it's that preemptive. But again, I think you're way, way, way too over the top with all of the things that you're doing. Like Dion and I talk about, it is, hey, you can check the filter when they're there doing some other work. No tree guy is going to make sure that you're a priority before that. And when you do that trimming, we just did one. We just did one. We had them go around and hit a bunch of properties. The last time that those were done was 4 or 5 years ago, maybe 6. And yes, Chris writes, regarding the pest thing. Yeah, it obviously depends, like what market you're in, termites or whatever. But again, most of those things, if they're selling you on a plan where we need to keep on coming back, then what type of treatment did you do that only works for 6 months? I'm trying to better understand what are the long-term policies. Like once after I've killed everything off and nothing has any place here anymore, what can I do to make it so they just never come back? Usually there's something like that. Hopefully that's helpful to you, Money.
So Money, these are great questions. Nice. Thanks for clarifying that you're here in Washington because real estate is local. Know what you need to do. There are places where you probably have different pest control. I don't know what you guys do in Florida with those 3-foot green lizards that are all over the sides of the roads. I don't know if they get on your properties or not. But in Washington, we have sugar ants. So I don't do pest control. I educate the tenants on how to buy Toro from Lowe's or Home Depot and how to put it out once a year or so, depending on if there's maintenance at a property or not for something else. We'll put rat poisoning in crawl spaces or behind a dishwasher. The HVAC stuff, living in Spokane, here's the most important piece of advice that I can give you. Don't have HVAC. It's not needed in this state. I have 2 properties with it. I had 4. Every time there's an issue that's going to cost more than $1,000, rip it out, put in cadet heaters in the walls. You have the space in the electric panel because it was running the HVAC, and you can get wall heaters that will run on 110 or 220, and they're smart. They'll switch to whichever one you hook it up to. Probably have an electrician install it. But the pest control, educate your tenants. Do Washington, we have the rat issue, the rodent issue. I've never paid pest treatment, and believe me, they've got good sales pitches if they show up. That's literally how the YouTuber Chandler David Smith made his money to buy rentals. He started in his early 20s and was making $90,000 per summer selling pest control things that people don't need. Yeah. The tree thing, each property is unique depending on the trees that are there. Make sure that, for me, the 2 things that matter is one, that anything that's a danger to the property, like if it's leaning like it's going to fall in the next storm, Is it towards the field or towards the house? That would determine whether I do anything about it. The second thing is it's got to be far enough away from the structure so insurance is not going to have an issue. So make sure you're clearing that. Get multiple quotes from tree trimmers because they're pretty good at scaring you. And then in Washington, depending on the trees that you have, there's a seasonality to when you have certain jobs done. And there's times of the year where you can, what we call butch a tree way back to make you don't have to deal with that tree for the next 7 to 10 years. But if you do it at the wrong time of the year, you can kill the tree. So make sure you get a couple of estimates on that and figure out the time for the type of tree that you have. It's almost like, based on the question, you want systems for doing maintenance that would make it harder than what has to be done.
Yeah, agreed. Because what you're probably looking at there is you're probably at 12 to $1,500 worth of maintenance contracts. And the way that Deanna and I do it, I mean, for me, I'm less than $100 for all of that same work. I'm less than $100 because there's, on an annualized basis, I'm less than $100 for all that work.
Yep. And as far as like the filters go, leave filters with your tenants. They're not that expensive, and just tell them, hey, if you want to swap this out every quarter, as long as it's accessible. Yeah. Most of them are easily accessible. See,
Dion's allowed to be lazy because all of his tenants have to work so hard. They're doing all the spraying. They're doing all the filter changes. We just have people take care of that. But yeah, for us, it is just look in the system. Hey, and we just have them date the filter. From our perspective, we have HVAC systems because we need heat very much in the summertime. Sometimes they have central air as well, but that's something really easy for us to that's something very simple for us to change out. And if we haven't been to a property in a year, we want to be there. We want to put eyes on it at least one time.
Let's get a question from the chat. The people who know us, who know our content, who hear us talk separate from each other. What is something they think we would disagree on? I mean, everyone knows that you're a liberal and I'm a conservative. So
true.
No.
I mean, if you knew that, then you definitely knew what you were in for on the Raging Tomato.
Right, exactly. Still, congratulations on going on there. I would not want to surround myself with that much stupid.
It was I felt I'm a good swimmer. So thankfully I was able to swim in the vast pool of idiocy. The definition of lazy. I don't know. I think Dion and I have the same definition. I think that, I think that the first 10 years of his investment journey weren't nearly as lazy as he thinks that they were, because it is a lot of work. Now
acquisition is not lazy.
Right. But now I think you're cruising altitude, which is where we both are. And so my definition of lazy, and when I hit lazy, is like a step above coma. Like, it's brutal. Like, I love baseball cards. I love buying and selling baseball cards, and I play with that all the time. Right now, I probably spend 20 hours a week playing and talking about baseball cards. I love it. And
here's my definition of lazy for this week. I want to play an online game, but that means I'd have to turn on my gaming laptop, and that's too much work.
Exactly.
So
it's
for
a
me,
button.
there's two. Go ahead.
It's a button. It's a lot like a button, and here's the worst part.
The screen up.
Yeah, exactly. You got
to the 7-inch screen,
and you got to go get it.
Like, what anybody's ever seen, but that's the gaming screen. It's like it's as big as 70-inch. That's what everybody should be gaming on.
Yeah, I mean, I agree.
Now you see what the workstation looks like. There's two things that matter to me with lazy. The first one is, and I've heard this from multiple sources my entire life, if you want to find the easiest way to do something, ask a lazy person. Like, they will know the easiest way to do it. And the second thing is, there are things that have to be done. Get them done as fast as possible so that you can do all of the nothing that you want to. Mm-hmm. It's not lazy that you delay what you need to do. It's not lazy that you don't do something, right? Like, the wrong kind of lazy is contacting a lender and getting a loan from them. The right kind of lazy is contacting a lender shopping rates once you're under contract to get the best rates and terms so that you do the least number of purchases to get you to the right cash flow, because you know you got the best interest rate. So the lazy was do all of the work to make sure I'm contacting these agencies to get the right rates and terms on these mortgages. The wrong lazy would be, well, first, real lazy would not be buying a rental, but the wrong lazy would be just getting one agent, one mortgage deal, and doing it. The right kind of lazy is you developing a relationship with your lenders over decades on multiple deals to where they'll create product for you so that you get the best deals, so that you have the most cash flow, so you can be as lazy as you want. Like, that's the right kind of lazy. So I think we kind of agree on the type of lazy. We'll always disagree on who's more lazy.
Ash is right. We do disagree on marriage. We've covered that in a previous video. Christopher Ramsey.
Hang on. Before we go on that.
Yeah.
Hypothetical world, hypothetical scenario. Something happens to Ashley.
Uh-huh.
You getting married again?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Sure.
Why?
I mean, for me,
what's the benefit?
So for me, I really enjoyed my marriage to Ashley.
But you didn't enjoy being around her when you weren't married?
No, I did. I think that
you hated her enough to get the government involved. You thought that was the solution?
Yes. No, for me, it's much more. And so we talked about this on our religious one. It is much more how religion views marriage. And so
religion says you can't get married. It was banned biblically for 2,000 years,
but not anymore.
It was to join families. It was not to say you were joined in the face of God. Like,
but
now your own religion a little.
Yeah, but now
let's argue that one. Let's get people pissed off.
But now we're good. So yeah. So I would, if something happened to Ashley, yeah, I would see where I end up. I would be open to getting married again. I know that we've talked about, Ash and I have talked about it. She's like, I don't ever want to get married again. She goes, she's like, it would be constant disappointment. I was like, you're not wrong. You're not wrong there. So she's smart. And then I think Christopher Ramsey got it right. What do you do with $300,000 of debt equity on a home? Well, the good news is that Dion is about to do exactly, he's going to take the lumberjack approach where he's going to lever some asset up, put some debt on something.
So we definitely disagree on that, because I've had way more than 300,000 in debt equity beyond like what lenders would go to.
Yeah.
For
Dion, you have $300,000 of debt equity on multiple properties.
Yeah. And I don't know that I have, I don't think I have one that doesn't.
Right.
And I'm okay with that. I sleep like a baby. I sleep like a baby knowing that bothers you.
See, and that's the thing is what has to happen is I have to get into scuba and then do some amazing scuba thing that Dion couldn't afford because he doesn't have because he has debt equity. But that will never happen. I'm too afraid of getting harpooned. So it's just not going to happen. Yeah. Would I rent Scott Brady asks, would you rent an apartment with a 6-foot ceiling? I wouldn't, because I'm 6'1".
Well, I'm 3'7", so I would probably be okay.
No, what's really funny is that Dion is, what are you?
5? Me? Yeah. I'm short. I'm like 5'8".
5'8". Okay. Well, I just didn't want to get the number wrong. So Dion's 5'8".
I usually say 3 foot something.
Yeah. So Dion's 5'8", but I'm 6'1", and I look like a child because of how I have my thing set up. And that's okay. Or at least
we all experienced that with Frank. We saw him on Zoom calls for months.
Exactly.
We meet him and we're like,
and he's a giant.
Are you Frank's dad? Where's Frank's dad?
Yeah, exactly. I didn't realize we were wearing, we were wearing stilts. But yeah, so Scott, I've had a unit with about a 6-foot ceiling. I have rented it out, but obviously, you're likely, I think we've never, ever, ever rented to anybody other than girls. I don't think we ever rented to a guy that rented that unit. So it is a challenge. The question is, why is it only 6 feet? Is it a roof? Is it a basement unit? On basement units, you can it's about $30,000 to dig up the entire basement. If it is a basement, it's about $30,000 to dig up a basement and put your plumbing lower, but then you can create another foot in height and you're good. If it's an attic, very often you can, pick where the joists are and you can actually raise the roof. and you can raise the roof line. Again, an expensive thing, but if you think about, oh, it's $40,000 to do that, but now I have a unit that I can rent. Well, there you go. Like, where else are you getting units for $40,000?
For me, it would depend on what is in the area. If I'm in my market specifically, if I'm in Thurston County, Yelm, outside of Tacoma, it has to be a regular height ceiling. I would not invest in the city limits of Tacoma. Before I decided that, I was looking at rentals there, and 90% of them are 2-story, where the top is maybe at one point was an attic, but they're probably not even 6 foot.
Interesting.
But it's normal. Everyone in that area expects the upstairs to be for kids or for shorter people. So in the right area, absolutely. In an area where it was the ones that stood out and it significantly limited my ability to attract a tenant, no.
Yeah. I mean, I can see the ad. Like, we would teach you how to write the right ad for that. It would be only Oompa Loompas need apply. You know, you do something to that regard.
Want to feel taller?
Yeah,
this is the place for you.
You want to be a giant amongst men? Rent here. What other things do you want to talk about, Dion? We came up on an hour and 15 minutes.
Well, I think it was good. I mean, we, other than the last little rant on marriage where I should have not gone, we were staying on topics related to real estate and investing. Where to live? I would never live on the East Coast.
Yeah, I would never live in a state that suffers from generational blue balls.
Yeah, that's getting there too. So I would never move back to California, but Washington is quickly becoming as bad or worse as California. I don't know that there's anywhere else in the country I'd want to live, though.
Yeah, I mean, it's a unique place. You know, you don't really have winters. It does rain a decent amount, but you don't really have winters, so you don't have to worry about snow plowing and salting and icing and frozen pipes very often. Frozen pipes do happen every once in a while out there, but not near with the frequency that they happen here. Yeah, I mean, I think every part of the country has its thing. You know, here we don't have to have central HVAC. We don't have to have central air, I mean.
No, but you die if you get locked out in the winter for 3 months.
Yes, very true. Yep. Yeah. So there's like I said, I think, you know, from that perspective too, is that, yeah, I mean, I'd be hard pressed to find states that identify with the politics that I have within my state. That's why I love New Hampshire. I had the chance to do Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Maine, and I picked New Hampshire because they were the most aligned with landlords. What are your thoughts on Olayinka asks, what are your thoughts with houses around a railway track? That's a great question. Usually I'm diametrically opposed. It depends on two things. One is what type of train is running on there. 2 is the frequency of the train that's running on there. And 3 is how close to an intersection are you, so you have to hear the whistle. We have one that travels right through the center of town. And there was a friend of mine who developed a piece of property on that land, and they spent so much money trying to take the noise out, but they're so close that they can feel it. And that train whistle you can still hear on the inside. And I'd say they have about a 15 to 20% renewal rate with their leases. That thing is constant freaking turnover. So that's a hard pass for me. That's exactly the opposite of what I want in my buildings.
A lot of times when it comes to, is this a good rental or a bad rental, which is kind of the premise of this question, is would you buy a rental next to train tracks? I want to say 97% of the time people say, would you buy this rental? Here's the math. Mm-hmm. This is the cost. This is the cost to acquire. This is the rent. This is the profit. This is my yield. But to me, that's an aspect, right? It's probably the most important aspect, but there's all this other criteria. Is it in a flood zone? Is it next to tracks? Is it next to an airport? Is it next to a mushroom farm? Is it next to a French fry factory or club? We did a members only earlier, and it was right next to a bar that looked like, yeah, there's probably going to be bar fights in the parking lot every day, right next to your place. So there's all these things to look at. Mm-hmm. So in some situations, railway could be an eliminator based on, is it a freight track that rattles and shakes everything? Probably not. Is it a commuter train where with remote work being more of an option now than at any point in our lives, Lake Hood, Washington, where Curtis invests, where I have one property and I don't want another. One of the reasons it's a good reason to own there is there's that commuter rail that goes to Seattle. You get a ton of people that work remotely that go to office once a week that will ride that tram. That increases it. So it's what type of track is it? How much rattling happens from it? But that's one criteria of what's the math on the place. What's the math if you, instead of going 5 or 10% vacancy, you said, okay, if I had 30% vacancy,
right,
that much turnover,
right,
is the math still good enough? Is there that much meat on the bone? And then does it have washer dryer hookups? Does it have parking? Is there a pet friendly fenced yard? All of those other aspects to where it can make it like go, I might buy it if it's next to the commuter rail. I might not buy it if it's next to the noisy one, and everything else included.
Yeah, we have a house that's literally built into the train tracks. It's built into it. It's a bridge, and then there's stone, and that stone is shared foundation between the bridge and the house. I don't know who came up with the idea. It's a really bad idea. But every few years that house sells, and it sells for about 35% less than everything else. And so no one can clearly take staying in that house for any amount of time, is what we typically see. Anything else? We disagree on alcohol. We do.
We disagree on alcohol and marijuana, I believe.
I don't think so.
We probably agree on heroin and cocaine.
I'm a conservatarian. That's the new word.
Conservatarian, nice.
Yeah. Because honestly, like if pot goes legal in New Hampshire, I'd grow that shit like you read about, because I know I'd become the best at it, or one of the best at it. So if it goes legal here, I already have a building. We're ready to go. Like I can turn that thing in 6 months and we'll be up and operational. And so I've got everything ready to go, make that happen. All the contracts, all the contractors, all the systems, everything ready to go. The PO's all but filled out. Alcohol, I don't care. I don't drink it myself. But yeah.
Yeah. So you don't drink.
No.
I do. So we disagree on that.
Well, what do we disagree on though? I don't care that you drink. I just choose not to drink myself.
I was just picking something else to argue on.
Like it's the same thing. Like I don't eat seafood either. But it's not because I disagree with seafood.
You live where they actually have lobster rolls.
We have everything here. I hate seafood. I just don't like it. I'm a texture eater, so I don't like shrimp. I don't like lobster. I don't like all those things.
This morning.
Yeah, I literally would go out with friends on their lobster boat, and I'd lobster fish for the day because it was fun. And it's a great workout, pulling all the traps and
okay, so there we disagree. I can't stand fishing.
So no. So I hate fishing, but lobstering is different. I don't want to fish. I do want to lobster. So Matthew says former jail turned weed farm, and truthfully,
that would be amazing.
If it goes well, so all of you guys can steal this concept. There are a couple of vacant banks. I would actually buy a bank. I'd call it the vault, and that's what I would turn into it. And we would still leverage the safe.
That's funny. One of the last things I did at the CDL school before I left is I used the school to purchase a bank in Twin Falls, Idaho, and turned the bank into a campus.
Yeah.
Because there's a bunch of the brick and mortar banks are just going away.
Yeah. And so for me, I want to buy, there's a bank building right now that's for sale that I'd like to put a deal together on. The importance of sports in our society. Yeah. Dion will not. Dion would definitely disagree with that.
We disagree. I don't think I've ever said it on YouTube before, but man, the hatred that I have towards sports. Go into Seattle and you any city and you see a stadium where they spent billions to put it together. They pay billions to the entertainers. People spend billions because they're making profit to be there. And you go out and then there's parking and you go out one more road and then you have the people that are homeless. An entire society of people that aren't benefiting, but the stadium is the important thing to our society. The amount of damage that happens, the take it, and when you say society, we're talking US. But when you take worldwide, look at all the deaths that happen at football games. And I mean soccer football, not American football, because of a game. Yeah, you want to talk about something that I think that should be taken out of society? It goes liberals, religion, sports. You get in that order. If you can get rid of those three things, this is a perfect utopia to live in.
Or anarchy.
You think anarchy happens with any of this? The anarchy happens because of those.
No, I think anarchy happens when those three disappear. I think anarchy.
No.
Of course.
They're literally doing air bombs because two countries say your fairy tale is different than my fairy tale. Right now, last night, that happened.
Yep.
That doesn't happen without religion.
Sure. If you get rid of religion, I'm telling you, it would be total anarchy, because most people would not have something a moral.
That's absolutely fake. Morality doesn't come from religion. In other words, slavery would have been stopped before it was.
I think
it was okay in the Bible. You're saying morality comes from religion. I'm saying it's the opposite. You want bad people do bad things. If you want good people to do bad things, it takes religion. But there's a question. Let's get off of that topic before I lose 20,000 subscribers from my YouTube channel. Scott says it's a perfect chance to talk hockey. I like hockey because that's the joke. The joke is you went to a fight and a hockey game broke out. I like violence. Violence is good.
We want Florida to win because we're Brad Marchand people. So we want Florida to win. So last night was disappointing when they lost in overtime.
You lost me when you're thinking there's an ice rink in Florida. Like, that doesn't go together.
There's many ice rinks in Florida.
I'm sure there
are. Scott Coleman, hey guys, you need a mediator. I'm usually have time. You're both half right and half wrong. Well, it's good. It's good to be at least half right.
I'll guarantee I'm wrong most of the time. That's why we don't go on these subjects.
And here's the best part. Dion and I are still good friends. I don't think any less of him. And he doesn't think any less of me. And that's cool. I normally wouldn't have a friend like Dion, only because we wouldn't have ever been in the same circles to hang out. We just never would have been in the same circles.
That's the power of YouTube University.
1,000%.
So, outside of the people that I've met through real estate, through investing, through these podcasts and everything, they don't watch the content. So I want to be absolutely transparent here. Most of the people I know are losers. They drag me down. They are that lobster. It's a crab in a bucket, right? The one that pulls the other crabs down in the bucket. No life goals. Never think of finances. A debate like this would never happen. So I'm super happy to have found YouTube, to find people like you, like the people in the chat. Like I've met, a ton of the people that are in the chat today, in person at events or at local meetups. That doesn't happen without a platform like this.
I agree. Yeah. And so that's where we get to do fun stuff like this and get to talk about stuff that we can help change people's lives, which is the most fun part. Dion, anything else?
Well, I think the thing to wrap up with is we disagreed on several things. Neither one of us was right. We were right for us. And there wasn't like I wasn't trying to convince you my way was right. You weren't trying to convince me your way was right. Everybody watching should take something that you do and improve their investing, something that I do and improve their investing, something that Mike does. Like everybody that we interact with has something that you can take and improve your systems with.
I agree. And you can catch Dion on Tuesday nights, 7 p.m. Eastern time, 4 p.m. Pacific. You can catch me Thursdays at 9 p.m. Eastern time, 6 p.m. Pacific, where we just answer your questions about real estate investing and have a whole lot of fun. So hi, Josh Burdick. Thanks for getting on just in time for us to stop the stream. But guys, have a fantastic week. Thanks so much for coming and hanging out with us. And like Dion said, just do one thing that we both do and it'll make your investing better. Anyway, guys, have an awesome rest of your day, and Dion, have a safe trip, and we will see you guys in the next one. Bye, guys.
Ciao.
And yeah, I do this until my